What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Talking Halos. I'm your host today, Jared Timms, and I am joined alongside my co-host, my partner in crime, Nate Green. Nate, how you doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Not doing too bad. I'm allowed to poke the bear.
Of course.
You pay $40 million for Shohei Ohtani.
Oh, I,
Would you pay?
hey, at
Would
least
you,
at
would you
least the
pay?
Giants, gave $40 million to
Would you pay $40 million for Daniel Jones?
a mediocre quarterback. So yeah,
I mean, think about it that way, huh?
yeah,
Dang,
that's the way I'm
we
thinking about
you
it.
don't want to sign. I'm being serious. Like $40 million, and the Angels hypothetically were to go in. This podcast is not about Shohei Ohtani at all, by the way. But I figured I'd throw it out there just because these are two of your favorite topics to talk about. First off, Daniel Jones getting $40 million a year. You're welcome for that.
Yeah,
And
that's
Shohei Ohtani,
tough.
right? All right, all right.
Shohei Ohtani getting 40 million. Yeah, I mean that's tough. It's a lot of money for a guy who one injury away from being a DH only. Like it's a lot of money. He's a very good player. Um,
I think
the
that's
Angels have to
I think that's
develop.
understated by us, by the way. I know we give the Shohei Ohtani, like trade Shohei Ohtani notion a lot, and we push that out there, but Shohei Ohtani is a very good player. Like
Yeah,
we both agree on that. Like he is
yeah.
very, very good. Just not. I don't think he fits.
The Angels don't have the right pieces for
Yeah.
him. You need to have a team that has developed well for a couple of years, hopefully like 5 years, but they haven't really developed well at all. And you got to develop well on the pitching side, and you got to develop well on the offensive side. You've got to have a lot of guys who can play multiple positions, and you've got to have guys that don't need to DH, which means you got to have a young team around him. And the Angels have Mike Trout and Anthony Rendon who both need to DH, and you pay those guys a lot of money, and they cannot be sitting on the bench, once or twice a week. So it makes it really hard. $40 million. I think you could spend that money elsewhere,
On Daniel
but
Jones.
sure, sure. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's
I
brutal.
apologize. I had to poke the bear there.
Yeah.
Let's get on to what you and I, well, I you said we've already talked about this a couple of times. I don't remember it for some reason. Maybe you did a podcast by yourself and posted it.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about the sixth starter. I think that's going to kind of be a theme. Okay. Logic, logical conversation here, Nate. You don't need to get upset. We don't need to throw in too many negative digs here. We're having a civil conversation about the sixth starter, which everybody knows.
After how you started this conversation, we're just gonna be civil. I don't
Well,
know.
I know where this is. I know where this is going. Uh, I'm not going to necessarily. I don't want to throw out spring training stats. I like to look at and see how guys look. I understand that spring training does not mean a lot, and we are a combined no, more than that, 15, maybe about 15 innings pitched by all these guys combined. So there's not a lot to look at. But there has been one person that has been better than the rest this spring, who has looked better than the rest this spring. I know you don't like him that much. But let's talk sixth starter. There are hypothetically, in a sense, five candidates: Tucker Davidson, Griffin Canning, Jaime Barria, Chris Rodriguez, Chase Silseth. We are on the same page on this conversation. We kind of
I
understand.
don't even know if C-Rod can be thrown in this combo.
I agree with that. I mean, if you want to start with C-Rod, I said he hasn't pitched yet. What are the chances that he is ready to go and able to pitch 5 innings? Right? I mean, you hope for 5 innings out of
Well,
your
and you
starter.
would need him to like actually show you something. Like it's not like pitched. He didn't pitch at all last year, so he really is the guy who needs to pitch in spring training to show like, hey, I'm ready to go.
Yeah,
So I don't even think he's really in the conversation. I would say Mason Erla is more in the conversation than Chris Rodriguez.
that's fair to say. I mean, I didn't throw in any of the guys that aren't on the 40 man. All these guys are on the 40
Gotcha.
man, so we can kind of cross out Chris Rodriguez for now. I think he has not pitched. I would don't know anything. I'd assume he's probably back in late April, May, especially if you're hoping that he is starting, right? I mean, if you think that he's in the bullpen, You think that he can go 1, maybe 2 innings for you. He's probably back early April, maybe, April, let's see, late March, early April would be my guess. I don't know anything. I'm just throwing out hypotheticals there, especially with him not throwing in live games yet. I think he's thrown in some simulated games, but nothing live. Let's move on to Jaime Bria, because I think this is the second easiest guy to talk about out of options. So the Angels either have to keep him or let him go or DFA him. I don't think there's anybody that you can logically DFA him for quite yet, especially with how he pitched last year, right? I mean,
Well,
and
in his role,
yeah,
like
in his
you
role,
just don't change his role. You keep his
yeah,
role the same.
I
And you
agree.
move on. I think we've seen all we need to out of that.
Yep. Yeah, I think keep him in the bullpen. Don't fix what's not broken. See how he does there. I know you want to extend him, but he pitched fantastically out of that role, bridging the gap from starter to that bullpen, whether it was in the lead or not in the lead. He pitched very similarly, like it was just a good role for him, that fifth, sixth inning guy to get to the seventh, eighth, ninth inning guys. In a I don't know if I'm going to call it a much deeper Angels bullpen this year, but definitely deeper up top, if that makes sense this year. I know we're not talking
We'll
about
see.
the bullpen,
We'll
but
see.
we will see.
No, we'll see. Going into the year, you had Iglesias. There is no Iglesias in this bullpen, so we'll see.
And I don't believe in a bona fide closer. So, with
Yep,
that,
we know,
I,
and
I
that's why that's why they don't win. It's fine. It's fine.
that's not the only reason, but we'll continue here with this conversation. Chase Silseth, uh, one of the let's say one of the three. I think that the first two that we talked about shouldn't necessarily be considered for that starting role. I think these next three should definitely be more so considered, but I think one of them, I think takes the cake at the end of the day for many of reasons. But let's get on Chase Silseth. I think ideally you want Chase Silseth starting back down with Rocket City, correct?
Yeah. I think personally that he gives you the most upside of any one of these guys that we've talked about. Like he has the ability to be the best starting pitcher of the guys that we're going to talk about. I do think that you have to give him a little bit more time. He's got some things that need some polishing, like good pitcher. We would like to see him throw maybe another pitch that goes the opposite way. Maybe he cuts it and sinks it, or cuts it and
Work
two
on
seams it.
work on some fastball
Um,
movement.
yeah, just make sure there's some movement because it is pretty straight. Like, yeah, he goes hard, but it's pretty straight. So if you can work on something like that where he just needs something to move a little bit more. But he's still young, like he was drafted 2 years ago. It's not like this dude was drafted, 5 years ago out of high school or something. Like this dude was drafted 2 years ago. So like let's let him develop. Don't push it because like the Angels don't need him right now. Like they have some other options who you can give opportunities to, and if they're good, great. If they're not, whatever. And plus, it looks like the sixth starter might not even pitch till about the fourth week of the season, if I'm looking at this correctly. So might as well get him in the minor leagues, get him on a rotation, get him throwing once a week, and let him work on some things. So that's my opinion on Silseth.
Yeah, and another thing I wrote it down. If he flat out wins it, then you give it to him. Like he is dominant this spring type of thing. Otherwise, you just don't do it. You if you see what you saw out of Chris Rodriguez a couple years ago when he won the spot out of spring, and everybody was like, "Wow, this guy is a little bit different." If you see that, then you roll with it. So, Griffin Canning, Nate, I know you're not in on it. Hasn't pitched in it first start 2 days ago. In 20 months, I'm with you on this. You cannot rely on it. However, if he throws strikes and returns to the Griffin Canning of old, you have to consider him as a
What
sixth
is the
starter.
Griffin Canning of old?
Can I say UCLA? Is that fair, or does that not count?
I don't think that counts. I want to know what the real Griffin Canning of old is like, because the way what I'm hearing about with Griffin Canning, like from people, is this dude is a Cy Young candidate. He is an all star. Like that's kind of what people are trying to say about Griffin Canning.
Mm-hmm.
That dude hasn't thrown more than 80 innings yet, right? I'm gonna look this up to see
Probably not.
the
Probably not at
exact
UCLA.
number of
Probably
innings.
not at UCLA either. And while you're looking it up, one thing that
Yeah,
we want, that we've always said we like out of Griffin, we want to see out of Griffin Canning,
90 innings is
is
the most he's ever thrown.
even
So
at UCLA too.
I'm just looking at purely in the big leagues.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So you want to 90 innings? I'm not willing to throw everything on a guy who's coming off two injuries, not just one. He's coming off two injuries, and he really hasn't been that successful in the big leagues. Like you look
He's
at the
had
numbers, and it's like
he's had his times where he has like 2 or 3 good starts in a row, and it's like, wow, this guy fits the part, and he looks really good. And then there he has 2 or 3 or 4 starts in a row where it's like, ooh, like this guy
how is
is
this guy?
what? Yeah,
How'd this guy go in the second
it's just been
round?
very inconsistent, it seems like. And that honestly, like you gotta can kind of compare it to the Reed Detmers thing too. I think that they're probably in very similar spots in their career. Granted, you have the injury with Canning, but if you can find a way for him to be a little bit more consistent, and I don't know, I want to say I trust the Angels development in guys, and I would actually really like to see him start in AAA and see, because I mean it took Reed Detmers one start in AAA for them to be like, well, this is what this guy has done. This is what we need to change up. In a sense, is it's that slider. So I know
I
I
think they're completely different pitchers. I think
well, yes, they are.
What Reed Detmer's problem was in the big leagues and what Griffin Canning's problem is in the big leagues are not even on the same page. Looking at this, Canning's career FIP is a 4.69, 5.60 ERA in his last year, 3.99 ERA the year before, 4.58 FIP in the 4.3s,
How many innings
5.4s, like
how many innings did he pitch in that 3.99 year? Was that
56.
2020?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
So
you gotta
11 starts, 56 innings. That's, he's going about 5 innings a start. So not
which is
really.
what you want out of that type of guy. We've been talking about it, like the
Yeah,
swing
it'd be
man
nice for
type
him
of
to
guy.
do that.
Yeah,
Um,
but that was
but the
also three
problem
years
with
ago.
Griffin, yeah, long time ago.
Yeah,
The biggest problem I have with Griffin Canning is he is. How do I say this nicely? He does not change speeds.
yeah. He
Is the
throws.
same is the same thing. It is 92, 94 with the fastball. It's 89 with the changeup, and it's 82 with the curveball, and it's what 88, 90 with the cutter slider
Slider.
thingy.
It's three
I
fastballs
mean,
and a slider. It's 3 fastballs and a slider,
so,
right?
some metrics literally call it cutter because he throws it so hard and it doesn't move.
Yeah.
Like if you look at
And
the numbers, it literally says he's throwing a fastball, a slider, a cutter, a changeup, and a curveball because the Statcast picks up cutter because he throws it so hard with no movement.
those are
So
so
like,
hard, certain spin on it as well.
well, and there's no, yeah,
Yeah.
not enough spin to call it a slider.
And that's actually like I'm interested in I'm interested in that, because it's, if you can find a guy that throws off the same plane out of the same arm slot that has 3 pitches that are almost the same speed that move 3 different ways, it's kind of
But
interesting.
they
You just need
don't move three different ways.
cutter, fastball, or cutter, sinker, two
He
seam.
doesn't sink it though.
No, he doesn't. It's the same as, well,
It's four seam
change up a
and it's
sinker,
a
change up a sinker, in a sense.
it, his changeup. Honestly, like even watching his last start in spring training, it was like there were times where you're like, is that a fastball or a changeup?
Yeah,
Because it's the
we
same
did say
pitch.
that. We did say that.
It was the same pitch with the same velo. So if he's able to figure out how to slow his changeup down and throw the slider or throw the curveball with a little bit more depth, whatever you really want out of it. But he needs to be able to change speeds.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I know in high school you threw 94 and you were able to get away with stuff. You didn't have to throw the changeup in high school because you threw 94. You get to college again, you're throwing 94 miles an hour, and it's like
He'll get away with it.
you can get away with stuff throwing 94 in college. You probably threw the changeup a little bit more, and it was just kind of that like, hey, it's something different. It's not anything crazy. The big leagues 94 is below average. 95 is average right now, velo wise. If you look it up, I'm pretty sure
from starters, it's probably a little above average from starters. I would assume that
I
was
was qualifying all pitchers. I'm
yeah.
pretty sure all pitchers, like the average fastball in the major leagues is 95 miles an hour right now.
It's something close to that now. I know it
Yeah.
was like 92, 93. It's been sneaking its way
Yeah.
up. Yes.
So he's below average fastball. You need to throw two other pitches and be competitive with the two other pitches. You can't just throw them at the same speed in the same location. So that's why I'm out on him. He really needs to work hard on that. If he can do that, then, he's got, he's been good in the past in college and high school to show that he can do that. But if he can't change speeds, everyone in the major leagues can hit a fastball. And if they can't, they're not playing right.
Well,
like
and we've seen it with Ben Joyce. Ben Joyce gets hit. I mean, it's 100, it's 101, 103, 105.
Jordan Walden had years where he was throwing 101 miles an hour and he was getting hit. So like they've had guys in the past that throw really hard that get hit. And those guys are throwing triple digits. This guy's throwing low to mid nines.
Yep. So let's get on to our last guy here. This is the guy that I think ends up ultimately winning the 6th spot, not just because of the way he is pitched this spring. I know we're only in 7 innings, but the slider looks good. The fastball looks good. He's throwing strikes, which is one of the big things with Tucker Davidson that seems to be the issue. One question I do have here: do you worry about there being too many lefties in the rotation? Actually, with the Angels as a whole, do you worry about there being too many lefties pitching for them?
Yes.
So one concept here as well with the lefties is that the Angels used to be very bad at hitting lefties at home. So I know that doesn't change your mind, but we always say build to the strength of your stadium. And what if it's actually harder to hit lefties at Angels Stadium? And that's kind of what Perry. I know you're shaking your head.
What if it's harder to hit backwards, and we start trying to do that?
Just
go
with it here.
We could play the what if game all we want.
You play the what if game with me all the time. You say I say
what if this,
the what if game all
the time.
I'm just saying. The question needs to be answered. Do you worry about there being too many lefties?
I think it's an issue.
think about Tyler Anderson. Tucker Davidson's probably making the rotation or making the team because he's out of options. And also, if you cut him, then that just makes Perry and staff look really, really bad. Reed Detmers at that. What else do you got there? Jose Suarez. We got Patrick Sandoval. So you have, is that 5 starters technically? Yeah. 5 of the 6 starters are lefties. Then you go to the bullpen. You have Matt Moore, who's a lefty. You have Aaron Loop, who's a lefty. Am I missing anybody else there?
Quijada.
Jose Quijada, who's a lefty. That's now 8 pitchers that are lefties. Like I said, that for me, that's what the Angels are doing. That's what I'm thinking is that at home it is tougher to hit a lefty. So that's kind of what they're building is they're gonna go and try to win as many possible games at home. Like build around your home stadium. I know that's a weird.
Have you
weird
thought
thing.
that maybe the Angels just haven't had a good offense, and that's why they've struggled against lefties?
Yes, but even Mike Trout has said, like, there have been guys that have said it is tough to hit lefties. There's a reason why. Like, there's a reason why they actually made like field changes so that you could see lefties better at Angel Stadium. There's something with the way lefties pitch at Angel Stadium that it is tougher to hit. I'm not making this up, man. Like, there were signs on the walls that they would take down and have to leave green because it's so difficult. I don't know if it's the rocks out in center field. I don't know if it's a reflection. I don't know if it's I don't know what I don't know what it is, Nate. I'm just letting you know. You can go look up stats.
The Rocks are on the opposite side, so there's
I
no way
know.
it would be that.
No, it wouldn't be that. But I'm just saying, like, it's been an issue in the past
Uh,
with at home hitting lefties. So I don't know if that is the reason, but now I come back to asking you the
I think they
question.
just haven't had a good offense.
Does it worry you with too many
Yeah,
lefties?
it does work.
Disagree.
It does. Once, especially if you were to make a playoff, if you were making a playoff game or a playoff series, it really, really worries me. Because if you're running 3 or 4 lefties out there, because you're probably going to run 3 lefties out there, right? You'll run Ohtani out there. You'll run Sandoval, Detmers, and
Detmers.
Anderson, right? Those are the
Yeah.
4 guys that would pitch in a playoff series.
You'd assume.
Yes, as long as there's no trades or anything, right?
Yep.
I think that there are teams that just absolutely mash lefties, right? Like the White Sox a couple years ago when the White Sox played the A's, and it was like
They're like
the stats said
yeah.
the White Sox had lost 1 time to a lefty all year.
Yeah.
And it was like, does Oakland start a lefty or do they start a righty? And it was like,
why are you guys starting Manaea? Yeah.
Yeah, they started Manaea and Lazard in the best 2 out of 3, and they lost both. And it was like, what are you doing?
Stupid.
Like,
yeah.
they don't lose to lefties. Like, every bettor was like looking at that, going, "Oh, they're starting a lefty today. Okay, bet White Sox." Like, so those do matter. I think those stats matter, especially when you look at lineups, right? Like, you look at a lineup like Houston. Houston's running out there
a lot of the
lefties.
league is righties though. That's the thing, and it's always been a you're batting righties against lefties and you're batting lefties against righties. It's always been that way. There hasn't been something to change that. It's easier for righties to hit lefties, splits, all that fun stuff. So yeah.
But you get what I'm saying, right? There are certain lineups that just absolutely rake lefties, and certain superstars like Aaron Judge is right-handed. That it probably helps him to see lefties. You see, like, there's a couple other guys that are switch hitters like Jose Ramirez and guys like that. But then you go into like Carlos Correa is right-handed. You go into who else do we want to go to? Like, you could go to.
There are a lot of very good right-handed superstars out there for sure.
I'm thinking a lot of National League guys that are coming to my mind. You've got the Manny Machados, the Ronald Acuñas, and Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenados. But
you look at it right now in the AL West and the Mariners. You bring up Julio Rodriguez. J-Rod. The Astros. That's Altuve, Bregman. I mean, yeah, you get Alvarez.
Yeah.
On the left hand side, but
and Kyle Tucker, but you still have those 2 guys. And we saw Jordan can hit lefties or righties. Like, he's one of those few lefties that can hit lefties and righties. The Robbie Ray home run comes to mind. So yes, I do think it could be an issue. I'm not saying it will be. I'm saying it could be.
I'm sticking with that. It's harder to hit lefties in Anaheim. Don't know why, but that's what I'm sticking with.
It could just be because the Angels' offense sucks. The last couple of years. This year looks like it could be better, but Tucker Davidson probably wins the spot because Perry needs it to happen. Perry needs him to win the job. If he doesn't win the job, then Perry has to cut him, and then you have the Iglesias trade that people are going, wow, we traded Iglesias for a guy we cut, 6 months later. So he needs to. I think Tucker Davidson, people are going to point to the stats and be like, oh, hey, look, he's had a really good spring. But I think Tucker has had some friendly lineups. I'll say that. He has faced some B squads and some C squads, which is nice.
You're still facing professional hitters.
Jo Adell's a professional hitter.
Yes. And Jo Adell, yes, he's hit or miss, but when he's hitting.
Is he got 7 straight punchies?
He struck out 11 of the 15 times, and then he had a double and a single today.
Okay.
So,
yes, he was 2 for 3 today, but he had a point where he was like 7 straight punchies, and like you got other guys like Andrew Velasquez is a professional hitter. Like, okay, so there are guys that it does help to face when you are fighting for a spot. That's why I don't think the numbers are that important. That's why I want to see guys pitch in games that matter. And it's going to be interesting because how long of a leash do you give Tucker Davidson? If you really want to make the playoffs, how long of a leash do you give Tucker Davidson?
You already said it. You start with him, giving him a month, right? Because he doesn't need to start for a month. He gets one start in the first month, so he's coming out of the
it's probably 2 starts in the first month.
That's, I mean, even more so. You're hoping for 10 innings out of him, plus a couple, 2-inning, Tyler Anderson went 2 innings, or Tyler Anderson, you know what I'm saying, like that swing man, they get you.
Suarez goes like 2 innings for some reason, he got lit, and then Tucker had to go 3, 4, 5, 6 to get him in through it or whatever.
Exactly.
But how long? What happens if out of the pen he just gets lit, and then his first start he gets lit?
He's pitching well?
Then he keeps the spot. Like, that's the obvious answer. But I'm just saying, like, how long do you allow him to continue to not pitch well? Because you have to, like, I know you've got the ego of we've got to win game. Like, this guy has to be on the team because I look like an idiot if he's not. But how long do you let that guy not pitch well before you just say, you know what, we'll find another guy. We'll make a trade. We'll bring up Canning. We'll bring up Silseth
until Chris Rodriguez is ready. I think that's when, once Chris Rodriguez is ready, then it's like, all right, who are we DFAing? And Tucker Davidson might be that first guy. He might not be. I think it's until Chris Rodriguez is ready to go in the bullpen, because
if C-Rod has a setback and misses, 3 months, you're going to give Tucker Davidson 3 months.
No. I mean, if he doesn't have any, if
okay,
you get what I'm saying. Like, if he's ready early, like he doesn't have.
You get my point, right? Like, how long? But you understand, like, how long could it last?
It could last until next season if he's pitching well. I mean, I'm just saying, like, glass half empty, glass half full.
I'm just saying worst case. You always have to think about worst case. I know,
if he goes out there and gives up 4 runs in this first game, I'm not cutting him.
I'm not asking for you to cut him week, first outing. But if you claim to want to make the playoffs, right? Everyone is saying this is playoffs or bust. And they've been saying that for 8-10 years. But I'm just saying, if you claim to want to make the playoffs, and this guy is running out there in July with a 5.2 ERA, then you don't actually want to make the playoffs.
Well, if he's running out there with a 5.2 ERA in July, the Angels are trading guys away, and there's a lot of other issues than Tucker Davidson if he's running out. I'm just saying, like,
probably
if he's still running out there in July with a 5 ERA, there are a lot more issues, right?
Most likely, but I'm just saying,
if he's still going out there, you've had injuries, you're not in a good spot right now. You're talking about trading Shohei Ohtani.
Then you're hearing me say, why didn't we sign minor league free agent pitchers? Which,
there's no winning with you. So
no, not at all. Just win baseball games. If you win baseball games, then that's winning.
All right, guys, with all that being said, thank you so much for listening to this podcast here at Talking Halos. We'd love to know who your number 6 starter is going to be this year. Drop it in the comments down below if you are watching us on YouTube. You could go ahead and subscribe wherever you are listening. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow myself on Twitter at Jared_Tims. Nate at NateGreen34, guys. And thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.